What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ. This is Out of Bounds DFS, and in today's video we're going to do a first look of the PrizePicks NBA board for February 26th. It's about 11:30 a.m. here on the East Coast, so just keep in mind that all the projections you see in today's video are likely to change throughout the day. Now, yesterday I switched the format up on the video in terms of how I go through these breakdowns, and you guys seem to like it. So we'll keep things the same for today's video. But as you can see, visually, some things have changed. I've rearranged myself. I'm a little bit larger on your screen. I'm front and center. We've also done sort of a side by side here, so we don't have to switch back and forth in between tabs. We can have all of our PrizePicks stuff up on one side. We can have all of our Roto Grinder stuff up on the other side. So we can kind of do a side by side comparison. So hopefully you like this visual format change as well. Continuing to innovate, continuing to change things up and see what works best. So you guys drop a comment at the end of this video. Let me know if you like the way this works out, or if you want me to go back to being little CJ over on the side in the middle of your screen. We could switch it back, whatever you guys like. I'm all game for it. But if this is your first time on the channel, welcome to Out of Bounds DFS. We talk single player daily fantasy sports here. So if you're into playing DFS on PrizePicks, Monkey Knife Fight, and then we'll get into some of the other sites as they start to grow. Definitely hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. As I mentioned yesterday, we passed 600 subscribers in just under 2 months, so fantastic growth. You guys have been very supportive, and I appreciate everything that you do to continue moving things forward. So let's get into it. We've got a pretty decent size NBA slate tonight, so we'll start things off with injury news as we always do. Anthony Davis, forward for the Lakers, is going to be out indefinitely with a calf injury. Bam Adebayo, forward for the Heat, is questionable with left knee tendinosis. Al Horford, center for the Oklahoma City Thunder, is going to be out due to rest. Tyler Herro, guard for the Miami Heat, questionable with a right hip contusion. Dennis Schroeder is going to be probable. He should be on track to return due to COVID protocol. DeLon Wright is going to be out indefinitely with an adductor injury. Cody Zeller, Charlotte Hornets, questionable with a hip. Sadiq Bay, Detroit Pistons, questionable with an ankle. Cam Reddish, shooting guard, questionable with an Achilles. Devontae Graham continues to be out for the Charlotte Hornets with a knee. And Diallo, I don't even want to try to say his first name, but we'll call him Diallo, is out for the Oklahoma City Thunder due to a groin. So that's going to do it for the main injuries. We could start getting into some of the projections. And as you can see, I've already got the first group of guys pulled up here on the board. Indiana Pacers taking on the Boston Celtics. That game tips off at 7:30 p.m. tonight. So if we look at the game totals and spread here, we've got Boston at 110.75, Indiana 108.25. So it looks like it's going to be pretty good totals. I give it a green light in terms of spread. This game looks like it's going to stay competitive and stay close. So with that in mind, we can start talking about some of the players from this game. And we do so by sorting by DVA. Now, in case you missed yesterday's explanation, I'll explain it again. Defense versus archetype. So it's kind of like DVP meaning defense versus position. But instead of just using the 5 positions that we all know, point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center, this goes a step further. It takes point guard, for instance, and it breaks it out into more specific types of point guards. So it gives us an even better read on how a defense performs against a specific type of point guard or shooting guard or small forward or power forward or center. So I hope that makes sense, but I like starting here. And one guy that jumps off the board right here, right now, is Kimball Walker, because the DVA is set at 50.31, meaning that this Indiana Pacers team is very giving, very generous to combo guards like Kimball Walker. They're giving up over 50.31 fantasy points per game. Now, his projection is 32.33, so as you can see, Kimball Walker's projected for 33 over on PrizePicks. Let's dig into his recent game logs real quick. Loading. All right, so as you can see here, guys, we go back to the 5th game in his game log and start from there. 37.4, that would be enough for an over. 21.2 would put him under. He missed this game against the Hawks, but then bounced back here with a big 52 performance. 28.2 against the Pelicans and 30.3 against the Mavericks. So in his last 5 games, he's went over 33 2 times. So 2 out of 5, not a very high success rate, actually going under more often than he has gone over in recent games. So against the Indiana Pacers, I don't see any recent games to discuss, so we could go ahead and move to minutes, where he's expected to play 32. I already talked about this being a very good plus matchup for Kimball Walker versus this Pacers team. He's playing 3 games in 4 nights this season, or not this season. The rest situation is 3 games in 4 nights for him. He's playing 29.2 minutes per game this season. His fantasy points per minute is pretty good at 1.02, which just eclipses that 1 or more gold standard for fantasy points per minute, and his usage rating is at 28.06. Very good usage rating for Kemba Walker. So let's keep moving down the line here, see who else we have on the board that we like, that looks like they're in a good spot. Well, here's one that stands out, Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon is projected for 39.15 on RotoGrinders. On PrizePicks, he's projected at 40, so you're talking about a difference of about 1 point. They like the under, does RotoGrinders. Now, let's take a look here at his recent game logs and see what Brogdon's been up to. I think I took him the other night. I want to say I took the over and it did not pan out. Yeah, that game against Golden State is the one I would be referencing. But let's go back and start 5 games ago. 35.8 against the Pistons. That would put him under tonight's projection. 41.2, good for an over. 49.5, good for an over. 54.3, well, that's way over 40. And then 31.1, a bit of a letdown there. So in his last 5 games, you can see that he's had an over out of 3 out of the last 5. So pretty decent success rate there. We've already talked about no recent games between Indiana and Boston, so we can move ahead and talk minutes. He's expected to play about 35 minutes tonight. He is a combo guard. Now, this stands out to me, this DVA number. The Boston Celtics are allowing over 47 points per game to combo guards like Malcolm Brogdon. So you look at the average points allowed by this Celtics team, and you look at his projection of 39 on RotoGrinders and 40 over on PrizePicks, and you could see that there's some upside here. There's potential for him to have a good game, a big game. So definitely like what I'm seeing there. 2 games in 3 nights for him, playing 36 minutes per game. He's out on the floor quite a bit for this Pacers team. And of course, you have to be out on the floor in an NBA game or any sporting event if you're an athlete in order to get us fantasy points. So we need him to play as many minutes as possible. His fantasy points per minute are 1.1, pretty decent. And his usage rating, 26.7. Very good numbers there. So liking what I'm seeing out of Brogdon. I think he makes a lot of sense in terms of an overplay. Now let's continue to move down the line here. See if anybody else really stands out. Jason Tatum, projected for 44.87. Pacers allowing just 32.59 fantasy points to versatile forwards. Not really loving that one. Miles Turner, projected for 32. Boston giving up 30.65 to versatile bigs. That one's okay. Sabonis projected for a huge number, 47. 36 or 30.65 given up by the Celtics. Not really loving that. Not really loving Jaylen Brown. So, I mean, if we're hunting for overs here, which is kind of what I'm doing, I'm not loving a whole lot down the board here. I mean, yeah, there's still a chance that some of these guys can go over, but in terms of like loving any of these overs down the line here, not really feeling it. So I think it's safe for us to go ahead and move on to the next game here. Houston Rockets versus the Toronto Raptors. We got the likes of John Wall, Pascal Siakam, Victor Oladipo, Fred VanVleet, Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry. So a lot of good names here, a lot of guards, as you can see, a lot of guard play in this game. So let's go ahead, filter out Indiana and Boston, and we'll filter in Houston and Toronto. And we'll start by talking about the spread. Toronto 114.75 versus Houston 106.25. So Toronto, pretty sizable home favorites here. You're talking about a 7 to 8 point spread. Do not give this one a green light go for me. This one's more of a, we'll say probably orange in terms of blowout potential. probably creeping into red. Houston, as we talked about in previous videos, just struggles to really stay competitive and to keep games close. And Toronto's playing pretty good basketball here. So I don't think that this is a situation where the game goes all 4 quarters in terms of starters. So that would push me toward leaning toward the under on a lot of these guys. But let's start going down the DVA list here and take a look at some of the guys that we like. So Fred VanVleet's one that stands out. He's projected at 38 over on PrizePicks, 40.11 over on RotoGrinders. So that would make him a couple of points over. And the reason that this looks good is because of this number right here. Once again, the Houston Rockets are giving up 52.5 points to combo guards like Fred VanVleet. Let's just take a look real quick and see what VanVleet's been up to recently. All right, so we dial it back here. 5 games ago, Milwaukee 39, then a 34.9, 48.5, 50.6, and 38.3. So as you can see, guys, in his last 5 games, he has gone over in 4 out of 5, which is a very, very good success rate. He's been playing better basketball here. If you remember in recent games, Fred VanVleet was projected around 40 points on PrizePicks on any given night. So the fact that they've reduced him down to 38 and he's in such a good matchup here leads me to want to take an over play on Fred VanVleet. Now looking back here, I don't have any game logs to discuss of Raptors, Rockets, so we can move ahead here and look at the minutes where he's projected to play 37 minutes, which is fantastic for us. I've already mentioned Houston, very, very giving to the combo guard type of player. So you see his average, or their average is 52.5 points allowed. His projections 40 on RotoGrinders, 38 on PrizePicks. Guys, this is a prime position for Fred VanVleet to potentially hit an over here, even though the spread is a little dangerous, is a little risky. And this is 3 games and 4 nights for VanVleet. 36.7 minutes played per game this season on average. 1.11 fantasy points per minute, pretty good to go along with a usage rating of 24.33. So liking how this is setting up for Fred VanVleet. You can also throw Kyle Lowry's name in that mix. Lowry also in an advantageous matchup here. Let's take a look at his recent game logs because I know he's missed some games, but we'll take a quick peek and talk Kyle Lowry real quick. Of course, he's been dealing with that thumb sprain, so I don't know, has that impacted his shooting, his ability to score the basketball, his ability to handle the rock? We'll just have to find out here. So looking at his game logs here, there we go, it's fully loaded. All right. Had a fantastic game in his last one against Miami, but let's skip back here to 5 games ago and see what he's been up to. So against Washington, 41.3 would put him well over tonight's 36 projection. 34.2, close but no cigar. 36.8 over, 38.2 over. And like I said, he missed 4 games in a row dealing with that thumb injury, but he bounced back in a big way 2 nights ago against the Miami Heat, putting up 47.4 fantasy points in that one. So in his last 5 games that he's participated in, he's went over 36 in 4 out of 5 and almost did it here, 34.2. So I'm liking the success rate that he's had. Now, something I want to bring to your attention is Kyle Lowry. I know it seems like a really, really long time ago, but Kyle Lowry was once a Houston Rocket. I don't know if any of you remember that, but maybe he plays with a little extra motivation. I'm just sprinkling in a little bit of that narrative for you in case you needed even more reason to like Kyle Lowry and going over. So just touching on his minutes and stuff real quick. He's played over 34 minutes per game for this season, 1.03 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 22.9. So his numbers in terms of fantasy points per minute and usage are a bit behind his teammate Fred VanVleet. But still, Kyle Lowry playing very good basketball here. Moving down the line here, we got Victor Oladipo in a pretty good spot. Let's talk about him real quick because he's kind of been a guy who's been hard to trust. His projection's 35 on PrizePicks, 35.36 over on RotoGrinders. Let's jump into his game logs real quick and see what Depot has been doing. All right, so that's finally loaded up. And as you can see, he's got a really spotty, crazy looking game log here. If we go back to 5 games ago, which would have been way back on February 3rd because he's missed so many games. He posted just 30 fantasy points there, 25, so 2 big unders. He bounces back here against Charlotte with a 40-point performance, drops all the way down to 15 against the Miami Heat. He only played 20 minutes in that game, so maybe we can throw that one out. And then he misses a string of games, 4 in a row. I think he's been dealing with like a foot injury. And then in his last one against Cleveland 2 nights ago, he puts up 36.7 fantasy points. So you want to talk about a guy who's been hard to trust, hard to predict or project. Victor Oladipo probably takes the cake on that one. But tonight he's expected to play 32 minutes. He is a combo guard. This Toronto Raptors team has actually been pretty giving despite their rank of 28th most stingiest or least giving, however you want to look at that. They've still allowed an average of 42.56 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So this is a plus matchup. There is some wiggle room here for Victor Oladipo to potentially go over. But again, we got to keep in mind the spread here could make this a blowout. And with Victor Oladipo already kind of nursing a foot injury, foot issue, you just have to question how much run he'll actually get, how late they'll actually keep him in the game. 2 games and 3 nights for him, though, playing 32 minutes per game this season, 1.11 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 28.52 for Victor Oladipo. Now, the other guy that falls into this combo guard category, which looks like a very good matchup as well, is John Wall. And John Wall's been playing good, but not great basketball lately. Let's look at his game logs real quick. 5th game back, 38.4. That would have put Wall just slightly over his projection of 38 over on PrizePicks. 50.1, big over there. 44.1, big over there. 27.1 would have been an under, and then 35.7 would have been an under. So in his last 5 games, a little hard to trust this guy. He's went over in 3 out of 5, though. So pretty decent rate, success rate in terms of going over. Now, he's expected to play 34 minutes tonight. We've already talked about 2 games and 3 nights for this Rockets team. He's playing almost 31 minutes per game this season. His fantasy points per minute, 1.15, and the usage is at 31.33. So if you compare him to Victor Oladipo, he's got the higher fantasy points per minute number. He's also got the higher usage rating, but he also has a slightly higher projection than Victor Oladipo. But out of the two, I'd probably trust John Wall a little bit more. But these guys haven't played a whole lot of games together, so it's kind of hard to get a read on their dynamic, how well that they feed off of each other and work, together. So I don't know. It might be a situation best avoided, especially with a blowout on the board. You got Siakam projected at 40 points on PrizePicks. This Rockets team is allowing 34.99 fantasy points per game to versatile forwards. That one may be a situation where you want to fade or just go under on him. I don't know, maybe Eric Gordon's a play here. He's projected for 29 fantasy points, but the Raptors are allowing just 24.5 fantasy points per game to scoring wings. So you might want to take the under on Eric Gordon in that one. And I think that's going to do it for this game. So let's move ahead and talk the next game. We got the Sacramento Kings taking on the Detroit Pistons. Some pretty good names on the board here. Darren Fox finally broke out of his slump last night. And, anytime you're trying to break out of a slump, you can't ask for a better situation than facing the New York Knicks. And that's who he happened to play last night. And it's no wonder he was able to bounce back finally and break out of that recent slump. So if we scroll over here and we enable the Sacramento Kings and Detroit Pistons game, we can start things off by looking at the game totals and spread. Now, Sacramento, they're projected to be the road favorite, 114 points. Detroit, 112 points. So you're talking about a 2-point spread here. I give that a green light go. I think this is a game that stays close and competitive according to Vegas odds makers, and the total's not bad either. 226 combined points puts us real close to that 230 or more mark that I typically like to target. So liking the way things are shaping up here. Now, we start things off by looking at DVA and trying to identify some good matchups, good positions here. And the guy that jumps out at me is Darren Fox. So he's projected at 40 on PrizePicks. If you see here on RotoGrinders, they got him at 41.35. So that would be a slight over, which I'm really feeling. And PrizePicks has been playing with Darren Fox this morning. He did start out at 40, I believe, and then went up to 42 or something. Now he's back down to 40. Well, I like the 40 here in terms of taking the over. Let's look at his recent game logs, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about of him breaking out of this recent slump. He had a string of games where he was always projected at 40 on PrizePicks and just kept coming up short. But last night, he was able to get it done and did so in a big way. So we'll start here against the Miami Heat, 29.8, 39.1, 31.2, 39.2, and then finally the slump breaker, 47.3. So in his last 5 games, he's went over tonight's projection of 40 just once, doing so last night in pretty dominant fashion. So I like this situation here for Darren Fox. I think hopefully that gives him a little confidence or whatever he needed there to continue this momentum. Now, he's playing 36 minutes tonight. He is a combo guard. As I mentioned, this team, the Detroit Pistons, they're pretty short-handed. So no Derrick Rose in the picture anymore. No DeLon Wright in the picture anymore. No Sadiq Bay in the picture anymore. So who's going to really slow down Darren Fox? I really don't even know who they have at their guard position. I know Sadiq Bay's on the board, but he was on our injury report, so there's a chance he doesn't play. So that's why I mentioned him. But yeah, I like this situation for Darren Fox. Now, fatigue could play a factor. This is a back-to-back for him and 3 games in 4 nights. He's playing over 33 minutes per game, 1.16 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of over 30. Almost 31 puts him in that elite company there. So let's continue down the line here. Sadiq Bay is a guy who is questionable, but if he does play, this looks like a good situation in terms of the DVA, the amount of fantasy points per game that Sacramento gives up to versatile forwards. That seems to be a beneficial situation for Sadiq Bay. I like that. That's a plus matchup. Jeremy Grant projected at 38.73. This looks like not really a great matchup on paper for him. We won't really dig into him too much. Going on down the line here, nothing else really is jumping off of the page for me in terms of situations that maybe we could take advantage of. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up on that note, and we can move on to the next game. We've got the Utah Jazz versus the Miami Heat. Some big names on the board there. So let's go find this game on Roto Grinders. There's Utah, there's Miami. And we'll start things off at the top of the board here, where Miami looks to be a pretty sizable underdog at home. 104.5. Utah 111.5. So you're talking about a 7-point spread here. Got to put that in the orange category. Not quite red for me. I do think Miami's got enough talent that they could make this game close and competitive for most of the game. So I don't want to call this a blowout by any means. But we'll start things off here with a guy that's jumping off the page, and that's Donovan Mitchell, who's projected at 39 points on PrizePicks, 39.77 on Roto Grinders. He's a combo guard, and the reason this is jumping out at me is the fact that the Miami Heat have done a very bad job at limiting combo guards' fantasy points per game. They're actually giving up 52.14 fantasy points. So let's talk Donovan Mitchell real quick. We'll pull up his game logs. Now, as you can see, if we go back here in time to February 15th, he put up just 33 fantasy points, which would put him under. Then he had back-to-back games of 50 or more fantasy points, which would put him over in those games. 36.8, good, but not great. Not good enough for an over. And then 42 would put him over tonight's projection of 39. So in his last 5 games, he's went over in 3 out of 5. And looking back here, he does have a game log against the Miami Heat back on February 13th. He played over 31 minutes in that game, but finished with just 33.6 fantasy points. So take that for what you will. That would have been an under on tonight's projection. So today he's expecting to play about 34 minutes. He's a combo guard, as I mentioned. This average of 52.14 fantasy points per game allowed by the Miami Heat is much, much higher than both his projections on PrizePicks and on Roto Grinders. So I would say a high ceiling game here is in store for Donovan Mitchell if Miami does find a way to keep this game close and competitive. 2 games and 3 nights for him, playing 33.5 minutes per game, 1.15 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 31.53. So very good usage and still very good fantasy points per minute. So moving down the line here, we talked Donovan Mitchell. Let's see if there's anybody else that's standing out from this game that is on the PrizePicks board. No Tyler Herro on the PrizePicks board. Instead, they've got Goran Dragic, who looks to make his return. Bam Adebayo projected for 41 on PrizePicks. He's at 39.45 on Roto Grinders and doesn't look to be in a plus matchup here against this Jazz team. So that might be a situation where you'd want to take the under on Bam. Jimmy Butler projected for 41.5 on PrizePicks. He's at 41.1 on Roto Grinders. And again, another situation where scoring wings like Butler have been limited by this Utah Jazz team. So again, not a situation that I'm probably looking to take an over on. This would probably be an under for me at first glance here. Rudy Gobert projected at 39 over on PrizePicks. He's at 39.36 on Roto Grinders. Again, this is a situation where post-up bigs just haven't performed very well against this Miami Heat front court. So probably not another situation where I'm not looking to target the over on Rudy Gobert here. And there's Goran Dragic. He's at 22.56 on Roto Grinders versus 21 over on PrizePicks. Being that this is his first game back, I mean, I think this is his first game back, but I would probably avoid taking Goran Dragic in this situation. And then all the way down at the line here, you see Mike Conley, who is projected at 30.86 fantasy points on Roto Grinders versus 28 on PrizePicks. So this would put him over according to Roto Grinders, but pass first point guards have not done so hot against this Miami Heat team. So there you have it for that game. Not a whole lot jumping out at me from that one. Donovan Mitchell probably being the favorite for me in terms of guys to target from that game. So let's talk about the next game, which is the Phoenix Suns versus the Chicago Bulls. Let's go find that game here on Roto Grinders. We turn those on and then look at Chicago, who is 109.5, and Phoenix 116. So you're talking about a pretty big gap here between these two teams. It looks like Phoenix is going to be about a 6 or 7 point road favorite here. So definitely put this one in the orange category for me. I don't feel super comfortable, super confident that this game stays close for long enough for these guys to hit their overs. But as we do here, we're going to start at the top of the DVA list. And Coby White is someone that's really standing out here. He's a combo guard. So Coby White is projected at 28 over on PrizePicks. You could see his projection here on Roto Grinders is at 27.82. So they like a slight under on Coby White. Let's see how he's performed in his recent games. So if we go back here to his 5th game, not a very good one against Detroit, 18.2 fantasy points. He played just 24 minutes in that one. Now his minutes start to go up here, starting with this game. 23.7, still not good enough for an over. That would be an under, so 2 unders in a row. 31.6 would put him over. He played 35 minutes in that one. Very good to see that. 42 fantasy points against the Houston Rockets. So going back to those Raptors guys that I was talking about, if Coby White can put up 42 against the Houston Rockets, why can't Kyle Lowry or Fred VanVleet tonight? Just saying, just throwing it out there. And then in his last game against Minnesota, 31.6 would have put him over. So as you can see here, guys, in his last 5, he's got 3 in a row where he's went over tonight's projection of 28. So things are setting up to look quite nice here for Coby White in his recent games. So tonight he's expected to play about 32 minutes against this Suns team. He is a combo guard, and the Phoenix Suns have absolutely sucked against combo guards. Let's just call it what it is. They're allowing over 50 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So with Coby White being projected at 28 points, I would say that there's a high ceiling here for him if he plays 30 or more minutes. And I told you that Roto Grinders thinks he plays about 32 minutes tonight. So loving the upside here for Coby White. 33.2 minutes per game, 0.86 fantasy points per minute. Not good enough in my book, but still, he's been playing a lot better lately. And his usage rating, 22.74. Again, not very good, just okay. So Do wish those fantasy points per minute and usage numbers were higher, but in this case, I can forgive that as he's been playing good basketball in his last 3 games and seems like he's setting up for a candidate to go over his projection of 28 over on PrizePicks. So let's continue down the line here and see if anything else jumps out at us. Here's one that looks like it could be a potential situation to target. So Wendell Carter's at 31 over on PrizePicks. They got him at 27.39. He's a versatile big. Suns have allowed just 28.4 fantasy points per game to versatile bigs. So I know clicking the over on Wendell Carter lately has been the way to go, but this might be a situation where you want to click the under on him, just depending on how many minutes he plays tonight. Let's look at his game logs real quick. So in his last 5 here, you can see his minutes have started to go up. They're trending upward, just like Kobe White. So they're starting to play these young Bucks, or young Bulls in this case, a lot more than they were in the past. So 30 points here would put him under, 20 would put him under, 24.5 would put him under. But man, look at these 2 games back to back here. 47.1 against Houston, 43 against Minnesota. You gotta love what you're seeing out of Wendell Carter here. So tonight he'll be facing off against DeAndre Ayton, another young big body. So yeah, you got to be careful with Wendell Carter. I think this could potentially be a trap or a situation to avoid. So everything seems to be pointing to Wendell Carter under in terms of where he's projected on Roto Grinders, and the fact that Phoenix has allowed versatile bigs just 28.4 fantasy points. So I'd probably avoid that situation because he's just been playing too good a basketball for me to feel comfortable taking the under on him. Devin Booker, yeah, probably a situation to either avoid or just take the under on. DeAndre Ayton, probably a situation where you can take the under on him. He's projected at 34 on PrizePicks, 33.37 on Roto Grinders, and Chicago's limited post-up bigs to just 23.19 fantasy points per game. Nothing else really standing out to me. Yeah, not really digging anything here. Chris Paul, 37.7 is his projection on Roto Grinders, 38.5 on PrizePicks. So Roto Grinders likes the under on him, and you can see why. The Bulls have allowed just 18.4 fantasy points per game to distributors or pass first point guards like Chris Paul. So, and finally, the last guy we'll mention is Zach Levine, who's projected at 43.5 over on PrizePicks, 42.76 on Roto Grinders. Scoring wings have been held to just 16.71 fantasy points per game. Not a plus matchup, not a positive situation for Zach Levine, according to what we're seeing here. So he might be one that is just best avoided, or simply take the under on him. All right, I think that's going to do it for that game. We can move ahead to the next one. We've got the Los Angeles Clippers and Memphis Grizzlies again. They're facing off on a back-to-back. They just played each other. Ja Morant was one guy that I remember that went under in that situation. So let's take a look at today's setup here. Memphis Grizzlies expected to get blown out again here by this LA Clippers team. Clippers are finally looking like they're getting healthy. They got their full complement of players. So makes a lot of sense why Vegas thinks that this game could blow out. Now Memphis 109.25. They're a pretty big home underdog here against this Clippers team, who are projected at 115. So you're talking about a 6 or 7 point spread. I wouldn't call it red, but I'd probably still put it in the orange for me. So let's start taking a look at some of the guys on the board here and see who stands out. Excuse me. So Ja Morant, 53.24 DVA. That's quite a big number compared to where he's projected today at 35.37. So you got Morant at 36 on PrizePicks, 35.37 over on Roto Grinders. They like the under on RG. Let's dig into his game logs and see what he's been up to. All right. So his last 5, overall have looked pretty good. 46.2, huge over on this 36 projection tonight. 39.6 over. 25.5, that was a disappointing game, but he only played 26 minutes in that one, so we could kind of toss that one out. 45.3 against Dallas. And then 28.9 last night against this Clippers team. So as you can see, the Clippers did a fantastic job on Ja. He played under 30 minutes, and they pretty much just held him in check. And with Patrick Beverley, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard out on the court, Serge Ibaka, I mean, they're a very stout defensive team when they are 100%. Now, he is a combo guard. Working in his favor is the fact that the Clippers have allowed 53.24 fantasy points per game on average to combo guards. But I did mention in yesterday's video, and I'll mention it again, and I'll keep mentioning it, that the Clippers are finally healthy and that this number is probably skewed a little bit and working against the Clippers, not one that I feel super confident in. This is a back-to-back for Ja, playing 30.3 minutes per game, 1.15 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 30.57. So, yeah, based on last night's game, he might be in line for a little bit of a bounce back here, but I'm still a little hesitant that he can hit 36 or more fantasy points. I'd probably still lean toward taking the under there. All right, so the next guy on the board, let's take a look at the list here. Reggie Jackson, no. Paul George, he's in a pretty good spot here. The Grizzlies are allowing 35.48 fantasy points per game to versatile forwards like Paul George. Let's just take a look real quick at George because he's projected at 40 on PrizePicks, 40.63 over on RotoGrinders, which would be enough for an over. And I think last night a lot of us took the over on George and he just did not pull through for us. So if we go back to his fifth game here, which is way back February 3rd, 49.8. Then he misses a whole bunch of games here. Returns on February 19th, 33.7, 54.7, 42.7, 27.9, excuse me. So in his last 5 games, guys, he's went over this projection of 40 once, twice, 3 times out of 5. Now, last night against Memphis, just 27.9 fantasy points. He averaged less than 1 fantasy point per minute, which is kind of surprising as he played 28 minutes against Memphis last night. So kind of hard to trust Paul George in this one, but maybe he bounces back tonight, just maybe. He's expected to play about 33 minutes tonight. It is a back-to-back 3 games and 4 nights for George, 33.2 minutes per game. 1.24 fantasy points per minute. So that's why I say it's surprising that he didn't even hit a 1 fantasy point per minute or more mark last night. And then his usage ratings at 28.32. So there you have it on Paul George. It's looking like, one of those guys where we don't really see a super sharp edge here one way or another. So it might be best to just avoid him. Kawhi Leonard also in that versatile forward category. Let's just look at how he did last night. He's projected at 46 today. He ended the night with just 30.5 fantasy points, playing 31 minutes. So this is another guy, another situation where it's like, yeah, he should be killing this team, but for whatever reason, him and Paul George fell short last night. Serge Ibaka projected for 22 today on PrizePicks. He's at 20.98, which would put him under. How did Serge do last night against Memphis? 20.4. So he was a good first half play, but as he typically does, kind of tapers off in the second half for whatever reason. Moving down the line here, Jonas Valenciunas. He's projected at 34 on PrizePicks, 34.31 on RotoGrinders. He actually hit the over last night. I think all sites kind of had him going under. And even though he played just under 25 minutes, somehow managed to get it done against this Clippers team, putting up 37 fantasy points. So, guys, I'm just not really liking a whole lot of plays out of this game. I'll be honest with you. Nothing's really standing out to me, and I'm ready to move on. So let's do the damn thing. Next game is one that I am excited about. This Hawks team taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Couple of good young guards in this game. Trey Young, SGA. And then we got a good big man here in Clint Capella. So let's take a look and see what stands out to us. Well, right off of the bat here, SGA is jumping off the page. Now, he's at 44 fantasy points over on PrizePicks, which is much higher than where he's been in recent memory. Recently, he's been around 40 points. Well, they've jacked his fantasy projections up quite a bit. And I don't know that they've jacked it up quite enough, to be honest with you. His projection on RotoGrinders, 46.28, would put him over by a couple of points. Let's look at his recent games and see what SGA has been up to. So if we go back to his 5th game, 33.6, not good. That would put him well under. 27.3 would put him well under. Now 49.3 would put him over by quite a bit. Then he hit 39.9, which would put him under. And then his last game against the Spurs, 56.6 fantasy points. So in his last 5, he's just hit 44 or more in 2 games. 2 overs, 3 unders. So tough situation for him there. No games to talk about against this Hawks team, so we can move ahead and discuss minutes, where he's expected to play 37. Now, combo guards versus this Hawks team. This is why SGA is a standout for me tonight. The Hawks are allowing almost 60 fantasy points per game to combo guards. So 60 being much higher than 44 on PrizePicks, 46 on RotoGrinders. There's room for SGA to go off in this situation. This is what I call a ceiling game, a ceiling matchup. Very plus matchup here. Hawks are the #1 most giving, most generous team to combo guards like SGA in the entire NBA. So it's setting up very nicely for him. He's playing over 34 minutes per game this season, 1.2 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 27.82. So love what I'm seeing here for SGA. He's a guy that I absolutely feel comfortable about taking the over on. The spread should stay pretty competitive here. It's just 5 points. While it's maybe not completely green for me, maybe it's like green-yellow on the border of yellow, I still think that these two teams kind of match up well, and that OKC should stay in this game long enough for SGA to do his thug fizzle thing. So liking SGA here. Now the next guy that's jumping off the page is Trey Young. He's projected for 48. Huge number for Trey Young. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna front. That's a big number for him to hit, but he has been playing some pretty good basketball recently. His projection's at 47.15 on RotoGrinders. Let's dig into the game logs and see what Ice Trey's been up to. All right, so we go back to his 5th game here, and I told you guys, he's been balling. He's been balling out. And it's time for us to really take him serious. 53.6 against Boston, 55.3 against Boston. Then he just elevates his game to another level against the Nuggets, 64.7. Drops down a little bit here, but still up in that 50-point mark. 52.4 against Cleveland, and then 47.3 against Boston. So in his last 5 games, he has smashed 48 in 4 out of his last 5 games, and came really close against Boston in this rematch here at 47.3. So loving what I'm seeing out of Trey Young recently. He's been playing much, much better basketball. He's expected to play 36 minutes tonight. Combo guards against this OKC team have averaged 51.27 fantasy points per game. So it's setting up real nice here for Trey Young. There's some room, maybe not as high of a ceiling, but there's a little bit of a ceiling here for Trey Young to go over 48 in this matchup. 3 games and 4 nights for him, playing almost 35 minutes per game, 1.3 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 34.44. Love everything about this situation here for Trey Young. So long as the game stays close, these guys should do well. Moving down the list here, no Danilo Gallinari. John Collins is a guy we haven't talked a ton about. I know he was suffering from concussion symptoms recently, but he should be good to go tonight. He's projected at 32 on PrizePicks, 31.5 on RotoGrinders. Let's look at John Collins real quick. Loading. Keep them game logs loading. All right, in his last 5 games, guys, 31.2, 12.6, 35.7, 18.1, and 29.7. He's been a hard guy to trust in terms of taking overs on. Most of the time here going under in these games. Now, his last game, he played just 25.22 minutes. Now, I told you he was dealing with some concussion symptoms. Maybe that cut into his minutes a little bit. I also want to say that I heard that there were some trade rumors around John Collins' name recently, so I don't know. They might be taking it easy with this guy. If they're trying to trade him, then they probably want to feature him just enough, but not too much to where he could get injured or something. So a little bit of a weird game log here. Big game for his standards, bad game, big game, bad game, and sort of a big game for him. But he's failed to hit 32 or more in 4 out of 5 games. So 4 unders to 1 over in this situation. Now, why I like John Collins, or why I think this is a good matchup for him, is the numbers that add up here. The Oklahoma City Thunder are allowing 36.93, let's call it 37 fantasy points per game to versatile bigs like Collins. That means they're the 4th most giving, generous team to versatile bigs like him. This is 3 games and 4 nights for him, playing 30.7 minutes per game. His usage rating is 20.61, not very good whatsoever, and his fantasy points per minute are just good enough at 1.03. So there's some definite things working against John Collins here, but the matchup's looking like a +1 for him on paper. Maybe Darius Basley. Are you feeling Darius Basley? He's projected at 28 over on PrizePicks, 26.91 over on RotoGrinders. So I would say that there's a little bit of upside here for a good Basley game, especially if Al Horford's out of the lineup. There's a chance that Darius Basley can go over here. So let's look at him real quick. All right, not very good game logs whatsoever for Basley. Hard to trust this guy. He's out there running track, as you guys like to say. In his last 5 games, he had a decent game here, 27.4 against Memphis, but then 14, 16, 19, and 10. So he's went well under tonight's projection of 28 in 4 out of his last 5 games. Now, he should receive an uptick in both fantasy points per minute and usage without Al Horford in the lineup. He does have some upside when Horford's out, and just in general, 36, 34, 43. So he doesn't do it very often. He is a guy that typically you probably want to click under on, but I would not be surprised if, given this DVA situation for Basley, if he finds a way to go over tonight's projection of 28 over on PrizePicks. So again, this Hawks team, 34.48 fantasy points per game allowed. So decent situation for Basley. Moving on down the line here. Nothing else really jumping out at me. So yeah, not even Clint Capella down here. I mean, OKC maybe. Okay, so maybe Clint Capella has a better game here because Al Horford's out of the lineup. Al Horford, pretty good defender. If he doesn't play, then Clint Capella might be able to get the job done. He's 42 over on PrizePicks, 41.19 on RotoGrinders, but post-up bigs have not done well against Oklahoma City. They're allowing just 20.5 fantasy points per game, but that's probably with Al Horford in there. So without Al Horford, maybe Clint Capella gets there, but not a situation I think that I want to target or attack. So let's talk the next guy on the board. Next game, we got the Charlotte Hornets versus the Golden State Warriors. Now, we were supposed to see this Steph Curry versus Hornets matchup a few nights ago, and it just never happened because Mr. Curry experienced some illness of some kind. So let's find him tonight and see how this one's looking on paper here. Well, Golden State, they're projected for 119.25 points against this Charlotte team. Charlotte, 6-point road underdogs. So 6-point spread, probably putting that one in the yellow. Don't feel super great about it in terms of it staying close, but also don't really fear it in terms of it blowing out. Loving the game totals here, well over 230 combined points. That's a big green check mark for me as well. So should be tons of fantasy upside in this game. Excuse me. All right, so let's talk DVA here and see who stands out. We do have Terry Rozier up on the board. And, if Devontae Graham continues to sit for Charlotte, then maybe Rozier makes some sense here. He's projected at 34 on PrizePicks, 35.3 over on RotoGrinders. So they like the over. And let's just dig in a little deeper here on Terry Rozier and see what he's been up to. All right, so we go back to his 5th game here, which is against Minnesota. The dude went off, 52.9 fantasy points. 52.4 against San Antonio in his next one. 46.6 against Golden State. I mean, in terms of like a 4-game window here, Terry Rozier, 44, 52, 52, 46, just smashing. But something happens here, and he drops all the way back down to 20.2 and 23.2. So has Terry Rozier come back down to earth? I mean, I don't know, maybe. In his recent games here, Golden State, he played almost 39 minutes, ended up with 46.6 fantasy points. But I want to say there might have been some injuries or something where he stepped into more of an opportunity. You can see he played 38.9 minutes in that one. His minutes have went down in his last two games, 31 and 36 respectively. So there's a previous game to talk about there for Rozier. Now we can talk minutes. 36 minutes is his projected total tonight. Now, working in his favor is the fact that the Golden State Warriors do not guard combo guards very well. They're allowing over 51 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Terry Rozier. So to call this a plus matchup might be an understatement. This is a very good situation for him. This is 2 games and 3 nights for Scary Terry. 33.6 minutes per game, 0.99 fantasy points per minute. Doesn't quite hit that 1 or more fantasy point per minute number that we look for. And his usage rating, not super impressive either, especially for a guard, 22.9. There's centers out there that have a higher usage rating than Terry Rozier is sporting at 22.9. So loving the situation in terms of matchup. I'm loving the game totals. Spreads not so bad. Wouldn't be too scared about taking anybody on a full game over here or playing any of those single stats, whether it be points, assists, rebounds. Single stat I think is definitely in play for this game as well. So let's continue on here. Steph Curry, another guy that stands out here. So I look at this 47.74 DVA number. I compare it to his projection on Roto Grinders, which is 48. They like the under on Curry. He's at 52 over on PrizePicks. But, 47.74 points against combo guards. Now, that's just a faceless, nameless combo guard, right? But then we factor in the Curry effect, we'll call it. And that gets me a little bit excited here because Steph Curry is one of the best combo guards in all the league. So let's take a look and see how he's performed in his recent games. If we dial it back here and go 5 games back, 46.4 would put him under. Still a very good game though. 52.9, 52.9, 2 overs. As I mentioned earlier, he missed this game against Charlotte back on February 20th, but then he comes back 57.2 against the Knicks. Guards eat against the Knicks. Just an FYI in case you haven't been paying attention. And then 47.6 against Indiana. So in his last 5 games, he's hit 52 or more fantasy points in 3 out of 5 and really hasn't had any what I would call duds. I mean, he's still playing good basketball in his 5 games overall. So moving ahead here, he's expected to play 35 minutes. I've already talked about his DVA and liking that. 3 games and 4 nights for Curry, 34.3 minutes per game. His fantasy points per minute and usage numbers are some of the best amongst all players, regardless of position. 1.37 fantasy points per minute and a usage rating of 33.02. So loving the way that this one's setting up for Curry with the totals being what they are, with the spread being what it is, with the matchup being what it is. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I know 52 is a big number, but you can see he's been getting it done in his last 5 games. He could probably get it done here tonight. Gordon Hayward, he is at 37 over on PrizePicks. He's at 35 over on Roto Grinders. It's probably a situation where I don't see enough meat on the bone, enough upside for us. I'd probably stay away from Hayward. I think he, probably projected pretty good here at 37. Not somebody that I'm probably going to target. Draymond Green projected at 35 on PrizePicks, 35 on Roto Grinders. Not loving that. The Hornets are allowing just 32.61 fantasy points per game to versatile bigs. Probably not a place that I'm going to look to take an over on. So you could either fade it or you could take an under. Kelly Oubre, no, not interested. So that's probably going to do it for me. And then you can see pass first point guards. Just in general, guys, distributor archetype point guards like LaMelo Ball is listed at here just don't seem to score a lot of fantasy points per game in general. First of all, there's not a whole lot of them that are classified as pass first point guards. And I've talked about it in the past. I kind of consider LaMelo Ball more of a combo guard. So if you put him in that combo guard category, like Terry Rozier, and you look at Golden State allowing 51.66 fantasy points per game to combo guards, I think there's some upside here for LaMelo Ball, who's projected at just 40 on PrizePicks, 42 on Roto Grinders. But again, if you take him out of this classification of distributor and you put him in this classification of combo guard like Terry Rozier, I like the fact that the average of 51.66 is much higher than his projection at 40 over on PrizePicks. So good situation there. Now, finally, we can talk about the last game here. We've got the Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Portland Trail Blazers. The game tips off at 10:10 p.m. Let's enable Portland and LA and look at some names that might jump off the page for us. So we got LA allowing 47.48 fantasy points per game to combo guards, and we factor in that this is Damian Lillard, one of the better combo guards in all the league here. He's projected at 51 on PrizePicks, 50.48 over on RotoGrinders. Let's look at his recent game logs. Slow to load today. Slow to load. All right. Heading back to the fifth game. 57.4 puts him well over tonight's projection of 51 on PrizePicks. 73.8 against New Orleans. Huge game for him there. 60.2. Huge over there as well. 28.5 came crashing back down to earth against the Phoenix Suns, but only played 28 minutes. So we can kind of toss that one out and forgive him for that. 47.9 against the Denver Nuggets. Again, his minutes were a little lower than normal at 34.95, 38, 37, 36. He's playing more minutes in the games where he went way over. So liking what I'm seeing out of Dame time. Don't have a previous game log to discuss about him versus the Lakers. So moving to his minutes. If he plays 37 minutes tonight, 37 minutes tonight, guys, I absolutely love this situation, this spot for Damian Lillard. Already talked about it being a pretty good matchup here. Not a back-to-back, so he should be well-rested and fresh. Playing almost 36 minutes per game, 1.33 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of over 33 at 33.5. Loving the way this is setting up for him. Especially with the totals being what they are, this game is going to have over 221 combined points. 222, actually over 222 combined points. Portland, they're a little bit of an underdog here, but the Lakers have been struggling. And I think this is a game where Portland is going to give LA kind of a hard time and should stay close and competitive. Next guy we're going to talk about here, Dennis Schroeder. This is a good situation for Dennis Schroeder. He is probable to play tonight, so that's good news there. His projection over on PrizePicks is at 28. If you look at him on RotoGrinders, he's at 27.68. So they're in the same neighborhood, PrizePicks and RotoGrinders, 27 to 28. But what really shines here is the fact that Portland has not defended combo guards well at all this season. They're allowing 46.5 fantasy points per game to combo guards like Dennis Schroeder. So let's look at his game logs. It's worth looking into. If you go back to his fifth game here, 39.9 against the Oklahoma City Thunder would put him well over 28. 35.9 would put him well over. Now, these two games, he played very limited, very light minutes. 21 minutes, 6.1 fantasy points. Terrible. I mean, I almost outscored him from the comfort of my couch. And then in the next game against Denver, 27 minutes played, just 13.2 fantasy points in that one. But his last game against Minnesota, he bounced back in a big way, playing 32 minutes and putting up 39.7 fantasy points. So this 28 is a number that I think he can absolutely hit. And he's just been smashing in his last 5 or 6 games here, going over once, 2, 3, 4 times. So I like the way this is setting up for Dennis Schroeder. Now, his minutes are projected at 31 tonight. Already mentioned this as being a huge plus matchup. Portland, an average of 46.5 points allowed to combo guards. Schroeder at 28 on PrizePicks. Big ceiling here for Schroeder if he gets those minutes of 31. 2 games in 3 nights, playing over 31 minutes per game, 0.84 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 21.67. So Anthony Davis out of the lineup. Dennis Schroeder has been playing better basketball. His fantasy points per minute and usage numbers are on the rise and should continue to be pretty healthy going forward as long as AD's out. Anybody else worth talking about here? Montrezl Harrell's in a pretty advantageous position here, as is Marc Gasol. We don't have Marc Gasol on the board, but we do have Montrezl Harrell. So let's talk Harrell real quick. He's projected at 28 on PrizePicks, 28.02 over on RotoGrinders. let's just see how the former Clipper has been doing in his last few games. So if we go back to 5 games here, 31.7 puts him over 28, 14.8 puts him well under, bad game, 36.5, much better, 44.8, even better, and then 26.2 comes close but misses against Utah. So he doesn't get a ton of minutes, but when he does get minutes, man, he's a pretty productive guy. So I'm liking the way this situation is setting up for him. Now they got him playing 24 minutes tonight against Portland. Versatile bigs against Portland have done pretty well. 34.14 fantasy points per game allowed by this Portland squad. I've talked about it in the past. Enes Kanter is not a guy that I'm fearful of in terms of defensive prowess or anything. I mean, if Montrezl Harrell gets a fair amount of minutes against Enes Kanter or whoever else they have at center, I think he eats here. He's just too darn good. 2 games and 3 nights for Harrell, 24 minutes per game for the season, 1.08 fantasy points per minute, and a usage rating of 19.55. So, yeah, I wish his fantasy points per minute and usage were a bit higher, but man, he comes in there and he does turn the place upside down when he does get those minutes out on the floor. So I like in Harrell here. I think he makes for a good situation to take an over on. So moving down the line, is there anybody else we want to target or talk about? LeBron James is LeBron James. There's not a ton to say about him. This situation here against Portland, Portland's actually done a pretty good job from the looks of things, allowing versatile forwards just 34 fantasy points per game. LeBron at 52 on PrizePicks. He's at 53.26 on RG. Just going to take a quick look here. Yeah, in his last 5 games, he's only hit 52 or more in 2 games. So he's been a guy that taking the under on has just been working out more often than not. I know it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel comfortable or cozy to take an under on LeBron James. But man, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. But moving down the line here. Enes Kanter, nah, I'm good. Lakers are pretty good here with Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell against Enes Kanter. Not loving that at all. Gary Trent, not in a good situation here. Scoring or shooting wings, rather, like Gary Trent have been limited to just 18 fantasy points per game. So, yeah, not a whole lot else jumping out for me, but I think that's going to do it for today's video, guys. So new format as far as breakdowns go, new format in terms of how things are presented for you visually. Let me know in the comments section. Are you liking this? Or are you not liking it? Do you want to see more of this or do you want to see less of this? You know, we could do an over or under type of game down in the comments section, but I appreciate you guys, everybody in the Discord. Thanks for your continued support. I'm looking forward to the month of March. So if you're not dialed into the Discord yet, I'll leave a link down in the description below. You can join. There's a free Discord PrizePicks room where we talk, picks all day long. Then there's also a premium room if you want to pay $20 a month and get even more PrizePicks action for all you hardcore PrizePicks fans out there. Well, I got something for you too. So definitely think about doing that. This is CJ for Out of Bounds DFS. Another video in the books, guys. Till the next one. Good luck tonight. Let's win some money. Peace.